Welcome everyone to today's deep dive. We are going to unpack a highly intricate paradigm shifting framework today. So if you're joining us, you likely already have a solid baseline understanding of ancient texts and classical theology.
Right, and probably some of the historical debates around sacred geography, too.
Exactly. But today we are going to look at all of that through a radically different lens. Our sole source for this entire exploration is the extensive research of Dr. Khaled Waleed. He's the creator of the YouTube channel Almighty Covenant, or in Arabic, or Yuck.
And it is a sprawling intellectual architecture he's built. Every linguistic discovery, every geographical remapping, and every physical theory we discuss today comes directly from his body of work.
Yeah, and he doesn't just offer an alternative reading of a few verses. He proposes a fundamental restructuring of how we understand the text itself. I mean, we are looking at how a microscopic linguistic shift, literally just a single vowel mark, can cascade into a complete redefinition of theology.
And the physics of the human soul.
Right, the physics of the soul. But before we step into the mechanics of his theory, we need to establish some boundaries. Because Dr. Waleed's conclusions challenge deeply entrenched traditional beliefs across multiple religious sects.
Yeah, including established Sunni and Shia paradigms, not to mention historical narratives involving early Arab groups and the children of Israel.
Exactly. So our role here is entirely neutral. We are not endorsing these historical religious viewpoints, and we aren't taking sides in the theological debates his work provokes. We are simply acting as neutral guides for you, the listener, so you can examine the architecture of his thought process for yourself.
That neutrality is so vital because to grasp this framework, you have to suspend a lot of inherited assumptions. You have to start at the absolute foundation of his philosophy, which he calls the law of universal pairing, or al-Zujiyya.
Right, al-Zujiyya. Now, the idea of duality in creation isn't, entirely novel. We know things exist in pairs like male and female, heaven and earth, manifest and hidden.
But he doesn't treat this as just a poetic observation. He elevates it to a rigid, immutable physical law governing absolutely every created thing.
And he uses this as a rigorous mathematical proof for the existence of a singular creator, connecting it directly to the concept of al-Samad.
Yes, traditionally, al-Samad is understood as the eternal, or the one whom all depend upon. But Dr. Waleed reinterprets this through the lens of physics and logic. Well, if every created entity requires a counterpart to function, if light requires dark to have meaning, or a positive charge requires a negative, then the entire system is fundamentally dependent. He uses this highly specific phrase for it, genetic poverty.
Genetic poverty. I love that term. It strips away the romanticism we usually attach to an interconnected universe.
Exactly. From a philosophical standpoint, if a component cannot exist in isolation, it is inherently poor. It relies on a structural counterpart to maintain its existence. So the universe is an infinitely vast web of dependencies.
And a system entirely composed of dependent variables can't sustain itself. It would just collapse.
It has to. So the logic dictates that the force holding this system together cannot be subject to the rules of the system.
Think of it like a massive enclosed equation. If every variable inside the box is paired, for every positive integer there's a negative, the sum total of the internal system balances out. The force that actually contains the equation, the force preventing it from nullifying into zero, has to exist entirely outside of that dualistic framework.
Which means the creator cannot have a pair. If the creator had a pair, they would just be another dependent variable within the system of genetic poverty.
Right.
To prove the singularity of God, the al-Samad, you don't attempt to observe God directly, because a paired mind literally cannot comprehend an unpaired singularity.
Instead, you look at the inescapable duality of the creation itself.
Precisely. By proving that absolutely everything is paired and dependent, you mathematically prove the necessity of a singular independent creator holding the architecture together.
It's this massive macro-level concept, but the transition he makes next is what really requires us to lean in. He takes this cosmic scale law of duality and applies it to the microscopic level of textual linguistics.
Right down to a single Arabic root word, mim thalam.
This is the operational key to his entire theory on the Almighty Covenant channel. The root word wudi contains a duality within its own pronunciation, dictated entirely by the vowel marks.
Classical grammarians usually just view these vowels as phonetic guides for flow. But Dr. Waleed posits that these tiny marks are not mere pronunciation tools. They are intrinsic physical codes.
Ontological markers.
Yes, markers that define the fundamental reality of the object being described. Let's unpack the two variations.
The first one is mathal, pronounced with an open meme using the vowel mark known as the fatha. When the text uses this specific open vowel construction, Dr. Waleed states it is exclusively referring to divine original creation.
It denotes the absolute prototype. A mathal is unprecedented. It's an act of sheer divine will. There is no prior model, no iterative design process. It is the perfect original coming directly from the singular creator.
And he draws examples from the text, right? Like the creation of Adam or Jesus.
Yes. Those are instances of mathal. They are divine firsts, completely untainted by the system of genetic poverty, because they were direct manifestations of the unpaired creator's will.
Okay, so if mathal represents the divine original, we have to look at its structural opposite. The second pronunciation is mithal, with a closed meme, using the kasra, the small line below the letter.
And in Dr. Waleed's linguistic decoding, mithal never refers to divine creation. It exclusively identifies human imitation, forgery, or replication.
It's an earthly, inherently flawed attempt to replicate the divine prototype, where mathal is the pure original, mithil is the derivative.
He suggests that human beings, trapped in our genetic poverty, possess this arrogant desire to mimic the singular creative force of God. But because we are bound by duality, anything we create is fundamentally a mithal. It lacks the original sustaining power.
To put this in a modern context, instead of a cheap photocopy, think of mathal as the flawless, open-source baseline code written by the original architect. It runs perfectly.
And mathal is a buggy, localized fork of that code. A user tries to copy the architecture, but they don't understand the foundational logic.
So the resulting software is a bloated imitation that eventually crashes.
That captures the structural disparity perfectly, and it alters how we must read the ancient texts. Dr. Waleed is arguing that the placement of a fatha, or a kasra, is an immutable mathematical boundary. It tells you without ambiguity whether you are analyzing a perfect divine reality or a deceptive human construct.
Which brings us to a critical intersection in his research. If we accept his premise that mithal strictly denotes human forgery, we have to re-examine one of the most foundational theological statements in the classical corpus.
The phrase, Laysa kamithli shay'un.
Right. For centuries, scholars have engaged with this phrase as the ultimate defensive bulwark of monotheism. The traditional translation is essentially, there is nothing like unto him, or nothing can be compared to God.
It's used to assert that the divine essence is entirely unknowable and beyond the realm of human analogy.
But Dr. Waleed points out a glaring issue within his linguistic framework. The word used in that specific phrase is mithal, spelled with the kasra.
It does not use mathal.
Yeah.
And if we apply his logic strictly, mithal refers to human imitation. Therefore, the phrase cannot possibly be referring to God's essence.
Because God is so profoundly beyond the dualistic universe that the text wouldn't lower itself to invite a comparison to a created thing.
Exactly. So the traditional translation is, in Dr. Waleed's view, a structural misunderstanding of the Arabic code. He retranslates the phrase to mean, no mithal can ever be compared to God's original creations.
The paradigm shift there is just immense. He transforms a defensive, abstract theological statement into a highly aggressive scientific challenge.
The text isn't saying, do not try to comprehend God. It's saying, observe your greatest technological achievements. Your absolute best method will never even approach the baseline perfection of a single divine mathal.
It grounds the text in a startling historical critique. It moves from esoteric philosophy to a direct commentary on the human obsession with counterfeiting reality.
Which logically leads to the next major pillar of his theory. If humanity is continuously driven to create these buggy forks of divine realities, what is the ultimate consequence of that?
He argues that this tendency wasn't just limited to abstract ideas or local technologies. He claims this human drive culminated in the most audacious forgery in history, an attempt to counterfeit the geographic center of the world.
This is where his theories become geographically disruptive. We have to map out how he applies the law of universal pairing to the concept of sacred space.
Right, because if every created thing has a counterpart, then the ultimate center of divine connection, the sacred house, must inevitably have an opposite.
There cannot be a singular sacred space without a corresponding polarity. Therefore, he argues for the existence of an illicit house, or a forbidden house, albeit al-muharram.
And this is where his linguistic rule dictates his geographical conclusions. There is the authentic, divinely mandated prototype, the mythal, and there is the human-constructed imitation designed to deceive, the mythal.
According to his deeply researched mapping, the true original center of divine connection is located in Baka. And he explicitly identifies Baika as Jerusalem, or Al-Quds.
In his framework, Jerusalem is the authentic Holy of Holies containing a sacred rock. He views this specific coordinate as the unadulterated interface between the Creator and the dualistic universe.
Conversely, he looks at the current site of Mecca in the desert. He associates this site historically with Petra and the broader eastern regions. Through his analysis, he identifies this desert location as the human imitation, the mythal.
He uses a very specific textual term to describe it, doesn't he?
Yes, the Mosque of Harm, or Mosque of Opposition, Masjid-Dirar. Dr. Waleed is not suggesting this imitation was built by accident.
No, his reading of the historical texts suggests a coordinated effort by specific historical forces. He identifies these forces as factions within the early Arab groups and elements of the children of Israel.
He claims they engineered this missile in the desert with a highly specific detrimental purpose: to divert the spiritual focus and the literal energy of humanity away from the true mythal in Jerusalem.
Now, I want to pause here really quickly just to issue another reminder of our parameters today. You are listening to a deep dive into the theoretical framework of Dr. Khaled Waleed from his channel, Diatina. We are examining how his linguistic decoding leads to this massive geographical reinterpretation.
Right. We are not validating the historical claims regarding the children of Israel or early Arab factions. We are evaluating the internal consistency of his argument.
And internally, that consistency relies on a very specific understanding of what a sacred site actually is. He doesn't view the sacred house as merely a symbolic gathering place. He views it as a literal, functioning piece of cosmic infrastructure. It's a station.
A station is an excellent way to frame it. Think of the Mythal Jerusalem as the authentic, fully integrated charging station for the human entity. It's the geographic coordinate where the fabric of reality is thinnest, plugged directly into the divine grid.
In the middle, the desert site is a counterfeit station. It possesses the visual architecture of a charging station. It has the cables, the rituals, the circumambulation, but it is entirely disconnected from the primary source.
It's actually worse than disconnected. According to his theory, the mythal is parasitic. It isn't just a dead outlet. It's a design trap intended to drain the energy of those who interface with it.
So these historical forces built it to keep humanity trapped in a loop of spiritual exhaustion, going through the mechanical motions of connection, while actually being siphoned of their internal power.
Exactly. And this concept of energy and power is where Dr. Waleed bridges theology with quantum mechanics. He does not use these terms metaphorically. When he speaks of the human entity being drained or charged, he's referring to the literal physics of the human soul.
That is probably the most complex layer of his entire theory. Let's look at how he interprets the textual phrase, God is the light of the heavens and the earth.
Classical interpretation often reads this allegorically light as guidance or knowledge. Dr. Waleed rejects the allegory. He argues that ancient texts are describing literal electromagnetic realities using the vocabulary of their time.
So light, in his framework, is literal electrical energy.
Yes. And to understand how this applies to humanity, we return to the foundational law of pairing. The human body itself is an iteration of this cosmic duality. It houses a paired system: the soul, or al-ruh, and the self, or al-nafs.
In traditional discourse, those terms are often conflated, but he insists they are distinct, quantifiable, paired components of human biological hardware.
Right. If the body is the hardware, the soul al-ruh is composed of literal electrical energy. It is the internal manifestation of the divine light, and its physical nexus within the body is the head, specifically the brain.
And the structural counterpart to that electrical energy is the self, al-nafs. He defines the self as magnetic energy, and its operational center is in the chest, specifically the heart.
You have electricity concentrated in the head and magnetism concentrated in the chest. When you pair electricity and magnetism, you generate an electromagnetic field.
So Dr. Waleed argues that human consciousness, our entire spiritual and physical existence, is generated by this internal electromagnetic field. We are literally biological batteries operating on an electromagnetic frequency.
Which brings us back to the purpose of the geographic stations. True spiritual connection is the process of perfectly synchronizing your personal electromagnetic field with the primary electromagnetic frequency of the universe.
And the access point for that primary frequency is the Mathal, the true center in Baka, Jerusalem. He posits that this coordinate acts as a direct conduit to the original singularity, the energetic source of the Big Bang, held in stasis by the singular creator, Al-Samad.
This completely redefines the mechanics of religious ritual. In his framework, rituals are not cultural traditions to appease a deity. They are precise, physical methodologies designed to align a biological battery with a cosmic grid.
The acts of pilgrimage, specific physical postures in prayer, or circumambulation are literally attempts to complete a circuit.
Which makes the tragedy of the mythal that much more profound. If you take your internal battery, your carefully maintained electromagnetic field of Rho and naphs, and you travel to the imitation site.
You're attempting to plug into a dead parasitic system. You perform the rituals, you complete the physical circuit, but the divine current from the original singularity is not present.
The system is fundamentally broken. You return depleted, having expended your internal energy into a grounded loop rather than recharging it from the mythal.
This raises a massive structural issue, though. If we are essentially biological batteries, navigating a universe designed to test our ability to find the correct charging station while avoiding historical counterfeits, what is the end game here?
It's a question that borders on the existential. What is the purpose of this vast, exhausting system of genetic poverty? If our individuality is just the byproduct of an electromagnetic field, what happens to the I?
Right. What is the destiny of the individual observer in Dr. Waleed's universe?
This leads us to the final phase of his theory, his vision of cosmic evolution and the ultimate resolution of duality. He doesn't view the human experience as a static test with a simple pass or fail metric.
He proposes an ongoing cycle of spiritual evolution. The paired components of the soul and the self are injected into the physical realm to gain data, to experience friction, and to undergo purification.
And crucially, they can fail. The universe is described in his framework as a vast, unforgiving sorting mechanism, a refinery. Entities that fail to align their electromagnetic fields, entities that consistently plug into the mythal and drain their energy, are recycled.
They are continually processed through the system of genetic poverty because we are all fragments. In his view, the initial act of creation shattered a massive, original, energetic structure.
We are the scattered pieces of that original whole, wandering through a dualistic universe. The entire objective of existence, the trials, the necessity of locating the mythal, rejecting the mythal, is to gather enough experiential data and achieve enough electromagnetic purity to allow for a reconstruction.
And the nature of that reconstruction really challenges our modern obsession with individuality.
Yeah.
In his highest conception of paradise, the ultimate state of being isn't an eternity of individualized reward. It's the achievement of total, frictionless harmony.
The ultimate goal requires the eradication of the ego. The most highly purified souls, the ones who successfully navigate the cosmic refinery, do not maintain their chaotic individuality.
They willingly shed the boundaries of the I to integrate into a unified, perfectly functioning whole.
Think about it through the lens of systems engineering. Imagine an advanced institute filled with elite engineers. Individually, they possess brilliant minds and specific sets of experiential data. But their individuality is also the source of friction, miscommunication, and inefficiency. When they agree to shed their egos, to merge their individual processing power into a single, unified hive mind, they eliminate the friction of duality. They achieve a master discipline capable of building a flawless architecture, what he refers to as the city of light.
It really requires a fundamental shift in how we view existence. We fear the loss of the self. But in Dr. Waleed's view, the individual ego we cling to is the very definition of genetic poverty.
It is the proof of our isolation and our dependence. The highest spiritual evolution is the voluntary surrender of that fragmented state. Returning to the unified whole is not an annihilation of the self, but the ultimate fulfillment of its original design.
It is an incredibly demanding philosophical framework. It requires you to see yourself not as the center of the narrative, but as a minor component in a vast electromagnetic attempt to reconstruct the original singularity.
We have mapped out a truly massive intellectual terrain today, looking at the architecture built by Dr. Khaled Waleed on his channel Almighty Covenant, or UCSI.
We observed how his law of universal pairing mathematically deduces a singular creator from a universe trapped in genetic poverty.
We saw how a microscopic linguistic divergence between the open vowel of mythal and the closed vowel of mythal differentiates divine originals from human forgeries.
And we traced how that linguistic rule compelled him to remap the sacred geography of the Middle East, identifying Jerusalem as the authentic electromagnetic charging station and Mecca as the historical counterfeit.
before finally exploring his theory of the soul as a literal electromagnetic field, evolving through cycles of purification to eventually shed its individuality and merge into a unified cosmic consciousness.
The density of this material cannot be overstated. It is a fundamental disruption of accepted history, theology, and textual analysis. But the value of examining this framework is immense, regardless of your personal theological stance.
It demonstrates the profound consequences of rigorous critical analysis. It shows how interrogating a single assumption like the function of a diacritical mark can unravel and rebuild an entire worldview.
It is a masterclass in not accepting the baseline code at face value. And that leaves us with the necessary provocation for you, the listener.
Building directly on Dr. Waleed's central thesis regarding humanity's tragic flaw.
Right, our chronic inability to distinguish the divine original from the buggy, localized fork. We have to look at our own systems. If we are historically predisposed to building and defending beautifully constructed, highly convincing imitations that lack true power, where are you doing this in your own life?
Are you operating on the original, unadulterated baseline code of your own reality, your own mythol?
Or have you, through inheritance or intellectual laziness, plugged your entire electromagnetic potential into a counterfeit station, draining your energy to maintain an illusion? It demands an inventory of exactly what we are allowing to charge our internal systems.
It demands nothing less.
Thank you for taking this profound journey with us on today's deep dive. We encourage you to relentlessly question the structures around you, interrogate the code of your own beliefs, and keep seeking the original source. Until next time.